We're now moving on to going over the ikhandle command, and I separated this off because this kind of groups together a lot of different elements that we covered already, and it has a kind of a weird command on how it works. So our first thing is, let's find it. So I'll go back to my my command documentation. I'll go back to my substring. Now, like I said, if you ever do want to get here and you're in a command, you can just click on show frames. And sometimes you click on it twice because when you're in that little help doc one, it hit the click twice. And I'm going to type in here handle, or how about IK? And we got some different examples here. We have IK handle solvers, but IK handle is the one that I want. So I'm going to click on that. There we go. We got our synapses. We got all our flags. And the reason why there's so many flags in this command, because it not just does the RP and SEIK, it also does the IK solver for the spline IK. Now, that means there's a lot of flags. Most of them not relating to what we need it to right now. So what we're looking for is something that's dealing with solver. There we go, solver. So here it takes a string, so it's quoted text. And there's currently only valid solvers, IK RP solver, SE solver, and spline solver. Okay, so I should be able to go in and say PM IK handle and solver. And inside there, I'm going to use an RP solver. Curious. When we go back up to here, do you see how there's brackets around everything? And I mentioned this in the previous podcast, but this means it's optional. So you'll probably see that solver in here. There it is. Has brackets around it. So I'm curious, by default, what solver is it going to create? So let's just get rid of this. And we need to have some joints. We do. So I say one. I'm going to actually make it more of a typical leg on this. So boom, boom. Like that. And I'm going to select my first and my last on here, because that's what is required in IK handle. It's single play. Now, what type of IK? Now, you can always tell the IK if you go down in the channel boxes. See, this is actually an SE solver. So that was kind of... Okay. So if I want a RP solver, we're going to use that same command, the IK handle command. I'm hitting Command C and Command V. We're going to type in solver equals, and in quotes, we're going to use our IK RP solver. And then we copy and paste this because I typically would expect S to be uppercased on here, and it is not. Let's see if that works. So I'm going to undo it. I'm going to highlight my one command, hit single play. And it did look like it did it. And it does have an RP solver. And remember, the difference here is that is it have a knee or is it actually not have a knee? And that's the big thing. So I could probably type in here IK handle and say solver equals IK SC solver with the lowercase like that. And we can look over here. And there it is. So let's test that out. I think I misspelled solver. Oh, I didn't get the whole line. There we go. There's an SC solver. Good. So there's our commands. Now, why was I saying this was actually really different? This is the use that I really want, is that if we look down at the bottom here, we have different examples of the code. You'll see that it says import Maya commands. This is an older set of library commands inside of it. The PyMills was added in a few years back. Actually, I believe it was in 2011. It was officially part of Maya, and you could install it beforehand. But if you want, the PyMill mimics these commands. These commands have been in since like pretty much Maya 7.5, I believe. You can replace commands with PM as long as you import PyMill at the top, and they will still work. But if you notice here, it has SJ joint 1, EE joint 5. And if that looks like, hey, that's going to create an IK from joint 1 to joint 5, it does. You can explicitly name, and this is actually not normal. Most of the time, you just put the names of commands and the names of objects in the front of ours, and we're going to be covering that in the future. But this command does work a little strange. But what I want to do is that I a lot of times have to switch back and forth between these two solvers. And I could make a button for RP and SC, but what I want to do is cover over a different couple of commands. And my most common one here is going to be my RP solver. So what I'm going to do is inside here, I'm going to click on the little gear and say shelf editor. Okay, so I got my shelf editor here, and I can go through and I can go all the way to the bottom, and I can click a new button here to create a new shelf item. And I can name it here, tooltip, and I can say, okay, well, this is actually my IK RP. I don't think I really need anything else more on that. I could pick a different icon. I can do, let's say if it has handle, nope, but IK. Okay, you don't want one that big because it will be that big. Well, I don't want an IK that big because it is going to be gigantic when it does that. So I'm going to cancel this. I'm going to leave the button the way it is. You can always find a different one on there. I can say this is an RP solver for the tooltip, and it's all black. I like the black label underneath it. So now if I go to command, I can drop my code in here. Now it is in Mel by default. I can do Python. I can delete this, and I can just take my code. Now I do heavily suggest putting in import PyMel at the top of every one of these buttons. And the reason is because you never know which button you're going to press. Yes, you could have a button just for importing PyMel up here, and then all of them would work. But in this case, you're not really hurting it, and it's always works. And the cool thing right here is that if I have these selected, that's my first and my last, boom, there it goes. But what I can also do is I can hit double click, and I can go to Python, and I can do the same thing with the SC solver, like that. And I could put my, like that. And now I can say the first and end, and I can double click, and it makes my single solver. So I can actually set up my leg really quickly. First and end, boom, first and end, double click for an SC solver, first, and I just made my IKs really, really fast. So I'm not worried about if I did the wrong one. You know, it's because I had to consciously, and I always pick my default ones as first. So it's like, this is my RP. I use RP most of the time. And then my secondary one would be the double click. And you can also do pop-ups. And I have other podcasts that go over how to do different organization tools. I just want to do that one. Another one, I can go in here and I can grab my maintain offsets on here. And you might notice in my tool sets that I have right here is that I do this with my constraints. Like here's my parent constraint. Now you might say, well, which one is it? Is it snapping or not snapping? First of all, I have notes there. Is it parent constraint, no offset? Double click for offset. So this means it will snap. And these guys will probably say the same thing on it. But I have them all work the same. They're all snapping. And then the double click will do unsnap. So I pretty much go in there because most of the time I want to snap them to move them. And the fact is I did all of them like that, then I know instantly that, hey, that's a really quick way of identifying my commands. The last one I can do on here is I don't have to go the long way on that. I can go in here and I can go in here. Now this is maintaining offset. This is not snapping on here. And I can actually just highlight my code and say file, save script to shelf. And I can say, you know, this is parent. Now I'm going to say pconst because that's going to fill out. And if I go in here and I create a circle and I do some joints, and I say there's my driver and there's my driven, I click the button. I can right click now on this and hit edit, and I can take that same code, copy it, go into the double click, and I could say false here. Okay, and I can undo that, double click. Oh, this should be Python, not Mel. Double click, snapping, not single click, not snapping. And I can do all my constraints like that. Later on, you'll be required to do a shelf. And this is one of those type of things where you can use to make quick shelf buttons and to get some pretty good different ideas for workflows.